Hello, 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 everyone! Another Mautic conference. Welcome to everyone here today. It's such a pleasure to be here one more year. So it's so nice to see so many familiar faces in our previous session and also in the following sessions. So welcome to everyone. And our next session, it's such a great, a challenge because everyone is talking about AI lately. So it's hard even to follow and keep up all the new methods, the new tools, and the new prompts. Sometimes, I feel like I'm missing something that I could be better, improve the way how I market, the way how I create my campaigns. So that's why we have here today Christopher Penn. And Christopher, he is a co-founder and CEO of Trust Analytics and data scientist. So Christopher, the stage is all yours. Hold on, let me transition to Christopher right now.
Hi, my name is Christopher Penn, co founder and chief data scientist at Trust Insights, and this is generative AI for email marketing. You can't go more than 2 seconds without hearing about some generative AI tool, and lots of people are trying these out within the context of email marketing and marketing automation. Before we dive into ways you could use this, it's really important to understand what this stuff is. What is generative AI and why are we talking about it so much? When you hear the term model, you'll hear this term a lot in generative AI. It really just means a piece of software in the same way that Mautic is email marketing software and marketing automation software made by people for people to use. A model is AI software made by AI for AI to use. And there is a big difference between the interface and the model. The interface are things like ChatGPT and Siri and Google Gemini. And the models are sort of the engines underneath Claude 3 Opus, GPT-4 Omni, and so on and so forth. Why this matters is because more and more tools are beginning to integrate models that you can choose when you run them. This is, for example, IBM Watson X. You can pick a different model based on what you need it to do. For marketers who are just getting started using generative AI, the bare minimum that we recommend that you get familiar with are Google's Gemini, the free or the paid version, ChatGPT, the free or the paid version, and Microsoft Copilot, the free or the paid version. Those are sort of the big three where you can accomplish 70 to 80% of most AI tasks with these tools and get good results from them. The paid versions are typically better than the free versions in terms of what access you get and app limits and things like that. So, how do these things work? Well, the unhelpful version, this is from the 2017 paper by Google called Transformers, the Transformers architecture. This is not so helpful. The way these things work, particularly language models, which are the things that power things like ChatGPT, is that they are trained on enormous amounts of text. Companies take huge amounts of text and build statistical relationships of the words and phrases and sentences and paragraphs among the training data text, and then create almost like a library of statistics, not the actual text themselves, just the statistics that you then prompt and get information out of. Think of it kind of like a librarian, right? You go to a librarian, you ask for something. Um, but instead of coming back with an entire book, the librarian comes back with one word at a time. That's really how these things work, which means that if we want better results, we need to ask the librarian better questions. If you go to the library, you say, I'd like a book. The librarian's probably going to be like, sure, here's a book. And that's not going to get you great results. The way we talk to that librarian is a discipline called prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is essentially coding. And the way it works goes back to this quote by John Rupert Firth from 1957, who said, "You shall know a word by the company it keeps." When we talk to these models, when we write prompts, what's happening in the background conceptually is that every word we type has a word cloud around it. And then as we keep typing more words in as a prompt, the models find the nearest words on the shelf in the library that intersect So in this case, B2B marketing, these terms intersect, and that's how it knows what to return as a result. The probability is that one word belongs to the next word. So if I type in, what are the email marketing best practices in 2024 here? It says, strategy and preparation, content design, deliverability, and compliance. This is okay, but it's pretty generic. It's pretty bland. There's not anything new and useful here. Why? I provided so few words that it's like going to the librarian and saying, "Can I have a book?" Right? This is not very helpful. If I add some complexity to this, I say, "What are email marketing best practices in 2024 for email newsletters over 200,000 subscribers using a marketing automation platform like Mautic?" I've given it more words. I've doubled the number of words, and I've used some jargon like Mautic, for example. There are word associations, statistical associations on the back end that have it return much better results. Advanced segmentation, dynamic content, personalization tokens. That's way better than, hey, write interesting emails. And if I go whole hog and I start describing everything that we're doing, right? What are the best practices for this? You get very, very specific answers that are unique and helpful. If you remember nothing else from this entire presentation, remember this: the more relevant words you use, the better your prompts will perform. The more relevant words you use, the better your prompts will perform. Today's models can handle prompts that are pages and pages and pages long, hundreds, maybe even thousands of words. They have short term conversational memories. Google Gemini can remember 1.5 million words at the same time. Right? That's like having all the entire Game of Thrones book series in memory in a single conversation. So you should not be afraid to have thorough long prompts. The framework we recommend you start with is one we call RACE: role, action, context, execute. We say something like, you are a Google Analytics certified professional. You know Google Analytics 4, Google Tag Manager, Google Looker Studio, BigQuery, maybe Mautic. That is more relevant words, right? That's lots of relevant words. Your first task is to examine this table of channel grouping data. You tell it what it's supposed to be doing. Then you give it a bunch of data. You actually give it the data in the context section. And then the execution statement. Here's how you should be processing this, right? So that race statement, when you give it to a language model, comes up with really good results. Why? We gave it a lot of relevant words. We gave it very specific words that it was able to find the correct associations with. This worksheet, if you go to trustinsights.ai/prompt sheet, you can download the PDF. No form fills, nothing, no information to give, but this PDF will help you. You can print it out, share it with colleagues and things like that. The other trick that you should do with these tools is to ask them what they know about something, because that will really help not only you understand and sort of benchmark the tool, like what do you know about the Mautic marketing automation system, but it will also preload a lot of these concepts into your conversation, effectively functioning like having the machine write the prompt for itself. This second worksheet, the pair framework, talks about that in more detail, about how do you ask it to help you build these prompts for you. And again, no information required to submit. It's just a PDF. Go to trustinsights.ai/power questions. So in terms of how to think about these tools, a librarian is one way. I like to say, think of them like the world's smartest, most forgetful interns. Right? If you just got this intern and they got 255 PhDs in everything, they got a PhD in everything, but they're still an intern. They still don't know your company. They still don't know your specific circumstances. So you need to provide that information. You would never say to an intern, "Hey, go set up Mautic." Right? That would be a disaster. You would give the intern very clear directions. Here's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to stand up an Ubuntu Linux server. I want you to download Apache and PHP and MariaDB. I want you to download the Mautic package. I want you to uncompile it. I want you to change the config file, and so on and so forth. Those specific instructions would let the intern do their job, and you want to treat generative AI the same way. One other key point to remember is you should build a prompt library. This is a text management system of some kind where you can store your prompts as you build them, because you never want to store them in the AI systems themselves, and critically to share them. You want to be able to share them with coworkers or colleagues, again, if you have permission to do so, because prompts are code and code is intellectual property. So you don't want to be sharing it with people who are not authorized. But you want to share this stuff so that everyone can scale up faster. So let's look at some use case categories. The challenge with generative AI, language models in particular, is that because they're based in language, there's an infinite number of use cases. How many roles in your company use language? How many jobs don't use language? Right? Pretty much everybody does. So we have category cases instead. Case categories: generation, extraction, summarization, rewriting, classification, question answering, and synthesis. Sort of the meta. Let's talk through each of these. Generation, pretty straightforward. Everyone knows generation. Hey, write me a blog post, write me an email, and so on and so forth. These tools are very capable of doing that. They're good at writing pretty much any form of written content. So this is an example. A client gave me a list of technology tools, and the tool was able to build a privacy policy for the website. Then handed it off to the lawyer. The human lawyer reviewed it, made a couple of changes, and it was good to go. Critically important thing: never, ever, ever hand off a legal document, a financial document, or something with sensitive information to the end user without a human reviewing it. Machine made content that is high risk should always be reviewed by a human, no exceptions. These tools can code. They are phenomenal coders. So if you're running into, say, a deployment of some kind, maybe you're trying to do a config file in your Apache server to get Mautic up and running, you can feed it to that. Say, hey, help me diagnose this. Help me write a better config file. And these tools are perfectly capable of doing that. They can even write software. I asked ChatGPT if it could write a WordPress plugin, and it did. And I was able to write a WordPress plugin that was so good, I not only put it on my blog, I was able to give it away as open source software. Think about a plugin you might like to have from Mautic. Maybe you don't necessarily know how to code, but you know how to get the documentation from Mautic. You can give it to the system and say, let's write a plugin that does a specific task. When it comes to generation, a lot of people say when it comes to email marketing, it doesn't sound like us. It's because you haven't given it enough information. The more information you bring to a model, the less it's going to make up, and the more you can make it sound like you. If you give it examples, this is our corporate style guide. This is our examples of our last 5 email newsletters. This is the content from our webpage. Give the models examples, and they'll do a much better job of sounding like you. The more data you bring, the less data it's going to make up that doesn't sound like you. Second use case is extraction. How do we get data out of other data? This is an incredible tool called Notebook LM. I took all of the newsletters that we send from our Mautic system, exported them as PDFs, and now I can go back and ask it, hey, what themes have we covered in our newsletters? If you're trying to build an editorial calendar for your newsletter, or trying to figure out what you've written about this year, maybe last year, you can put these documents into a tool like Notebook LM. This is free from Google. And what's really great about this tool is it will give you answers for only the things that you provided, only the data you provided. It will not give you answers for stuff that it doesn't know, and it won't make it up. So if you need something as you're building your email marketing program to keep track of what you said and then be able to ask it questions, this is a great free tool to do so. When it comes to extraction, you can, for example, take a look at the open jobs at a company and infer their corporate strategy. Right? You can say, well, let's extract the jobs, the open jobs and job descriptions from a website and say, okay, well, what is this company trying to do? If you're trying to build an email marketing strategy, you could take the emails that a company sends out and say, well, what is their email marketing strategy? I get the last 5 newsletters from that company. What is their email marketing strategy? How is it different than ours? You can take any type of legislation. There's a lot of legislation happening around privacy and consumer privacy and stuff. This is the Informed Consumer Act from last year from the US Federal Trade Commission. You can extract out just the portions of the legislation that you care about. You might say, as an email marketer, how does the Informed Consumers Act impact me? And you will get tailored answers based on the source text. And of course, you can create stuff that you've extracted. This is a case where we took a bunch of 5-star reviews from my martial arts school's website, from their Google reviews, and extracted out the best reviews and then used it to create social media content. Phenomenal use case. It works really well because we're using the voice of the customer as opposed to what we think the customers would like. Extract the data and pull that into a system like a generative AI system, and it will do amazing things for your marketing. Our third use case category is summarization. Take big data and make it into small data. My favorite use case by far is summarization of calls or summarization of transcripts. Given a call, turn that into a transcript with meeting notes and action items so that you don't have to remember what you said on a call. One of my favorite use cases within this is writing ideas down. I can take my phone out, I can turn on a voice memos app and just foam at the mouth, have AI transcribe that, and then later on say, let's build a newsletter, an email newsletter from this transcript. And then I don't have to write again my words that I already wrote, and it'll sound like me because it's my words and my voice. You can aggregate and summarize. This was an example working with a nonprofit. It took 20 different people's perspectives on what the organization's mission statement should be, and we summarized it down into one that everyone could kind of sort of agree on. But it was a mashup of all of the existing data. We can take consumer data like reviews. This is a synthetic version because the real version, unfortunately, is under NDA of a restaurant, and synthesized and summarized down all the reviews into a few things this restaurant was doing well, a few things this restaurant was doing poorly, and a few things that the restaurant should do to improve. From a email marketing perspective, when you do this, when you understand what people are complaining about, you can then start to tailor your communications based on what consumers might or might not be complaining about. And you might know, like, oh, people do think our Norwegian cuisine menu is important. Let's make sure that more of our emails contain fun facts about that, so you can see what people are talking about, positive and negative, and tailor your email marketing program to that. These are phenomenal time savers for professional development. Last November, Google's algorithm changed, and a whole bunch of people created a whole bunch of YouTube videos about this. I didn't really want to watch them all, so I downloaded all the YouTube captions from all those videos, put it in a language model, and said, summarize this all. What are the main points? And it came up with 30 of them, of which only 3 were actually relevant. So instead of having to watch, 400 hours of YouTube videos, I could just get the high points really quickly. Some tools like Google Gemini, you can even just give them a YouTube video URL and it will summarize that YouTube video. This is my CEO, Katie Robert, on a podcast, and very quickly can see what she talked about on that show. Our fourth case is rewriting, turn one form of text into another form of text. I got this NDA that was just awful. This NDA, it looked like someone copied it off of Reddit. Turns out later that was true. And I had the tool audit it and then rewrite it. I said, let's rewrite this to a proper NDA. We did. I handed it off to my lawyer. My lawyer's like, thank goodness you didn't sign that first version because that wouldn't have gone well. So you can use these tools for just about any type of legal document rewriting. If you want to redline something, review something, you can certainly do that. These tools are, again, professional development masters. You can take any difficult concept and have it explain it into terms of something you understand. There's a very complex concept in AI called model parameters and model weights. It's all calculus. And I didn't do so well in calculus. So I said, explain it to me in terms of pizza. And it said, model parameters are like the variety of ingredients on your pizza. Model weights are how much of each ingredient there is. I'm like, oh, I understand that now. Anytime you are trying to understand something that is difficult, you can ask these models to rewrite it. When it comes to your email marketing, what a powerful way to explain difficult concepts. If you know that your audience doesn't understand something very technical about your products or services or industry, ask them what they watch, what their hobbies are, and then start using that information to draw analogies that make difficult concepts easy for people to understand. People will really value your emails if they know they're going to come away with something useful. You can have them rewrite emails themselves. This is a real email. Bob, you sent over 2 months of invoices in one day. Of course, it's not done. It's not going to be done anytime soon because this stuff takes time. And if you needed it sooner, you should have let it sit on your effing desk for 2 weeks. You can F right off and you'll get it. When you get it, go have yourself Karen in accounting. This email would get you fired. However, you can say, rewrite the following email in a professional tone of voice. Dear Bob, I hope this message finds you well, and so on and so forth. Any email, this is a facetious example, but any email can be rewritten to be more professional, to be suited for a target audience. If you have an ideal customer profile, you can say, rewrite this email marketing piece for this ideal customer profile. And these tools will do a fantastic job of that. Fifth category is classification. How do we organize large amounts of data? This is a case where I took Netflix's Instagram content and I said, do a sentiment analysis, score, classify, and sort this by sentiment. And these tools can process that information. Again, if you're trying to, maybe you have a competitor's emails from the last 6 months, you could take that email, their email marketing, and do sentiment analysis or topic analysis, understand what your competitors' blind spots are, and then make your own email marketing kind of address those blind spots. And the sixth use case is question answering. Give the machine data and ask it questions. You can do it things like, here's our current strategy. What are we not doing that we could be doing? Right? Take your email marketing strategy. Here's all the things we're doing. What are we forgetting about? These tools are fantastic at filling in gaps, filling in things you've forgotten. Another example, here's an NDA. Should I sign this? If I have things I care about, like bilateral fairness, you can hand these tools an NDA and say, tell me whether I should sign this or not. They do a fantastic job of explaining why you might want to or not. If you've ever done RFPs, they can read an RFP and then you can say, what things do I need to do in this RFP? What things should I be providing? And even better, what things have I already written about in other RFPs that I can reuse? It's a huge time saver. Again, thinking to your email program, think about all the emails you've already written for your newsletters and your email content. What stuff, if you've got to create a new newsletter this week, could you reuse or put a different spin on from previous stuff you've already done? And these tools can see, they can look at something. I took a web page from my website and said, analyze it. Tell me what you see, what could be improved with my UX. Imagine taking your email marketing, a template right out of your Mautic system and saying, you're a UI UX expert, what would you improve about this newsletter to make it more compelling to our ideal customer profile? Be a fantastic way of using these tools. So those are the major use cases for generative AI. And again, to remind you, those use case categories exist because there's so many ways to use these tools. So think about the things that you're trying to do that maybe are inefficient about your current email marketing program, and look at how can we use AI to do that. Now, when should you be using AI? The answer is all the time. Use it until you find out what it's bad at. In a test last year, Boston Consulting Group and Wharton Business School gave consultants access to generative AI. They found that across the board, consultants finished 12% more tasks, 25% more quickly, with 40% higher quality results, which is a pretty incredible change, particularly since it turned bottom performers into top performers in 5 hours. It is an incredible change in your workforce. So these tools are very capable. They're also very creative. They're good at brainstorming. In a Nature magazine study last fall, they found that on the average, machines were more creative than humans at coming up with good ideas and brainstorming, because there's a lot more variance with humans. Humans in general have many worse ideas. So these tools are very good at that sort of thing. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are risks inherent to these models. They do have, for example, biases. This is an old disclosure from OpenAI talking about issues with their models, saying that their models more strongly associate European American names with positive sentiment compared to African American names, negative stereotypes of Black women. So you've got to know that these tools can be biased, and you have to be very careful to ask questions like that to make sure that they're not spitting out biased content. There are copyright issues in two different ways. The first is whether or not the knowledge they were trained on it was infringing on the original copyright holders. That is being settled in law in courts. It is not clear yet. The EU is leaning, for example, towards saying it was a violation of copyright. In other places like Japan, they're saying no, it's not, because the result, which is a machine learning model, is so transformative that in no way could it be mistaken for the original works. The other side is, in most places around the world, machine-made content that's purely machine-made is ineligible for copyright, because there are many court cases that have said a machine, anything non-human, can't hold a copyright, and that extends to machines. There are some places where that is changing. The most prominent place is in China. China allows machines to hold copyright, so machine-generated works. Regulation is coming. The EU just passed the AI Act, which the analog there is, it is to AI what GDPR was to data privacy. The key tenets that the EU is looking for people to enforce is deter illegal uses of this technology, detect high risk use cases, document the use of it, disclose the use of it, and defend the rights of individuals. The one that applies to marketers most is disclose and document. So you should be telling people when you're using AI and when they're seeing it that you used AI for it. In my own newsletter, I start every newsletter with a disclosure, how much of that newsletter was generated by AI that particular week. And finally, when it comes to data privacy, the golden rule is if you're not paying, you and your data are the product. You and your data are what is being monetized. So be aware of the terms of service of the various services you use and make sure that that is in compliance with what your company expects you to do for data privacy. How is this stuff going to impact marketing? Well, we're already seeing impacts. One interesting note from this is from an MIT Sloan study back in the fall. When humans were told that machines they're seeing content made by machines, they did not have an adverse reaction to it. And when they were not told, they preferred machine generated content to human generated content. So from a marketing harm perspective, these tools do not cause harm. So it's worth disclosing, and it will not harm your brand if you use it skillfully. The Wall Street Journal estimates between 20 and 40% of sites will lose traffic to their sites because generative tools like all of them are intercepting search queries, particularly in information queries. People are no longer going to blogs as much or to websites as much to answer questions when the tools can do it right in the tool for you. So one of your key homework assignments after this talk is to go into your Google Search Console and Microsoft Bing and see how much of your traffic comes from unbranded search, and know that that's going to go away. A good chunk of that's going to go away. There are three things that marketers should be doing to mitigate the impact of AI. And number one is be as many places as possible, right? Show up on every podcast, show up at every conference that invites you, speak everywhere you can, and make sure the text is being put on the internet so models can crawl it and associate your company's name and brand with the topics you want to be known for. It's an inversion of your PR strategy. Instead of saying we only want to be in the best publications, now it's like we want to be in every publication we can be, because we know these models train on all this data. And from their perspective, a piece in the Sydney Morning Herald is the equivalent to the piece in Asahi Shimbun, is the equivalent to the East Peoria Evening News, right? They're all the same from a model's perspective, from AI's perspective. Second, and most relevant to everyone watching this, you must have a direct channel of communication with your audience that is not mediated by someone's AI. So not search, not social media. The best channel for most marketers, email. You need to make this a strategic pillar. Your email list and your ability to create content regularly and frequently and serve it up to people directly is what is going to give you insurance against the impact of AI, the ability for you to just give people information. And third, consider a community. We run a Slack community called Analytics for Marketers, where there's no AI in the way. It is all just, it's kind of like the old 1990s, early 2000s chat rooms, right? Where people can talk about whatever issues they want to talk about. But this is, again, another way to sidestep the impact of artificial intelligence. Let's wrap up with the question everyone has, which is how's this going to impact jobs? And there's two extremes. One is the Brookings Institute extreme that says it's going to take away tasks, not jobs, no impact on employment. The other is the Sam Altman perspective. It's going to do 95% of jobs. You're all fired. We're going to build companies have no employees. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And it kind of looks like this. Back in the 1700s, there was a profession called spinster, people who took fiber and wove it into threads. In 1762, the spinning jenny came out, and this eliminated a lot of the spinsters individually who either worked on these machines or went to other forms of employment, because this machine made the process so much more efficient. But it also created upstream and downstream effects. Suddenly, there's much more demand for raw fiber, and there's much more demand supply for textiles to make shirts and sheets and all these things. So as generative AI starts to change the process we use to do our marketing, you will see upstream and downstream effects, and that will have, in some cases, positive effects on employment for jobs that we don't even know exist yet. The key to keep in mind, though, is that instead of you doing the work a lot of the time, you're going to be sort of the conductor of the orchestra of these machines. And the sooner you are skilled at using these tools, the more likely it is that you will be the conductor of the orchestra. You will be the manager of the machines. In terms of how it's going to impact employment, it depends on the kind of company you work for. Progressive companies will look at the human capital they have and say, "Great, now that we've gotten rid of all the boring tasks, we can upskill our people to do the stuff they're really good at." Regressive companies that are maybe just purely profit motivated, they're just going to fire people as fast as they can to maximize profitability. So it depends on the kind of company you work for. Whatever the case is, though, this is the fastest shift we've seen. These major shifts have happened before, but generationally, what you did is not what your kids did, what their grandkids would do to do the same profession. What makes AI so different is that this is happening in a span of less than a decade. And so these shifts will be profound. So the key message to take away is that you don't want to sleep on this stuff. If you're complacent today, it means displacement tomorrow. You want to be ahead of the curve, which you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this talk. So, some final thoughts as we wrap up. There are a bunch of different use cases here on this slide that you can, and the slides are going to be available for specific tasks and which models tend to do the best job with those tasks. And this is a moving target. But if you remember just a few tools, these are the three tools we recommend you get started with: Gemini, ChatGPT, and Microsoft Copilot. Those are kind of the best ones right now. And I'll leave you with this thought in terms of what will be the driver of success for you in the generative AI age. Two things. Number one, these tools are skill levelers, right? I can't sing, I can't make music, but I can use these tools to make music. That in turn means that my ideas are what matter. So whoever has the most best ideas will win. And as we talked about, if you bring your data to these tools, they will do a good job of working with that data and creating good outputs. So whoever has the most best data will win. Those are your two strategic advantages in the age of generative AI. So that's going to do it for this talk. If you'd like more information about how we do this stuff, feel free to sign up for our newsletter, our podcast. Reach out to me if you'd like, and we have courses over at our academy that teach this stuff as well. Thanks for watching, and now it's time to answer some questions.
Hello, hello, everyone. What a great session. Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you for bringing such great topics, because we've been using AI in a kind of a Western way how to do it, just throwing you know new prompts. So it's great because you created a kind of framework how you can extract more from AI.
Well, thank you for having me. And yeah, it's the tools are incredibly capable. I mean, that's the thing that we forget is these tools are language models, which means any task that's language is fair game, and they can do incredible things that you would not think. One of the big things that I think is important is, yes, the session is about email marketing, but you can do so much more with them. I'll give you an example. Um, when you look at a company's hiring, what they're hiring for, you know that those things are priorities, but there's a lot. So I was curious the other day, I looked at Novartis's website. Novartis has 1,700 job positions open. So I downloaded all 1,700. I put them into Google's Gemini and said, what is Novartis's 18-month corporate strategy based on what they're hiring for today? And it gave me a long list. It's like, okay, well, that now we know where they're going.
Oh, nice, very nice. Yeah, it's interesting how because sometimes we miss this kind of fresh ideas, how we can start with some kind of template, and from that we can iterate and create our own way. So nice. Well, we have uh, a, rec- a rate. Let's see if I can hand it this. We have a question from Nagarajan. Feel free to.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. It's a very useful presentation. I very loved it. I would like to hear your thoughts on the now out of the box softwares that's available out there to send all these email marketing, right? Mailchimp, ConvertKit, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign. So, what's your thoughts on that? And they are also having some generative AI push. Uh,
Yeah,
there.
everyone and their cousin is putting generative AI in their product. People are treating it like Nutella and trying to put it on everything. And in some cases, it's a good idea. Nutella on toast is lovely. Nutella on dill pickles, not so much. And the same is true with AI. So a lot of vendors are putting it into products just to appear current, just to appear like it's important. Um, 80 to 90% of AI tasks that you would do for things like marketing, you can do in a foundation model like Chat GPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic Claude, and do them really well because those models are the most advanced models. They're the fastest evolving models. Um, they are really really capable. Now where you will see value in some of those integrations is when they are doing things in an automated way, for example summarizing things at scale or cleaning up email addresses at scale. But the tap this button to write your this week's email, the prompting infrastructure on the back end that you don't see is usually so woefully insufficient that they don't add a lot of value. And people will say, like, yeah, this really reads like it was written by a machine as opposed to being written by someone who understands the tone and the voice. When you go through an exercise in, say, Gemini or Chat GPT and ask it, what here's a sample of our writing, analyze a style, what are the major components of writing style, what do writers often get wrong about writing style, what are some tips and tricks you haven't talked about, and then you give it your data and you say, help me understand my writing style, explain my writing style, and build me a comprehensive outline of what my writing style is. You will end up with a prompt that you can reuse that is 3 to 4 pages long, right? And these out of the box implementations, they don't have that. And so they sound like AI instead of you. So I would say be cautious in the use of other people's built-in AI for a variety of reasons. And if you want to use generative tools to do stuff like draft copy, invest the time to build out really in-depth prompts. Gemini, for example, has a 2 million token context window. That means a short-term memory of about 1.5 million words. That's, if you wanted to, you could put the entire works of William Shakespeare in as a prompt in Gemini and have room for another one. So when it comes to being able to prompt these tools for good output, you can give lots of examples, and the more relevant data you give, the better the quality it will be. And you just can't do that with the built-in tools in a lot of other people's software.
In just one prompt, Christopher, there is
Yes.
no limit in Gemini, like in terms of a number of characters, or it could.
1.5 million words.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, great. So thank you, Nagarajan, and also Nagarajan. He will be our next speaker. So thank you for participating. We have also two questions in our Q&A. I will highlight them here on stage. So where do you suggest we learn more about tech ethics that you talked about? I'm enjoying using the tools, but concerned about many aspects, including energy and copyrights.
Okay,
Thank you, Andrew.
so this is a complex question. Energy and copyrights and things are tangentially ethics. There's two branches, right? There's ethics and law. There are things you are required to do, like GDPR compliance is legally required. The EU AI Act is legally required. You must comply with those rules. If you live in a place that the EU AI Act does not govern, it is in your best interests to comply with it anyway, because as we saw with GDPR, other countries, other locales basically copy pasted parts of GDPR. And so if you are compliant with GDPR, you are automatically compliant with those lesser regulations. The same thing is likely to be true with the EU AI Act. You will see places like California and New York State, in the USA and Japan and other places starting to essentially copy paste portions of those things. So you have to be compliant with the law first. The second part is the ethics part. And ethics is an entire philosophical discipline that we don't have time to dig into today. However, there's two basic schools of ethics, right? There's deontology and consequentialism. Deontology is the rules are morally right. Consequentialism is the outcomes are morally right or wrong. The rules don't matter. And when it comes to the use of AI, it's going to depend on your company's ethics and values and your personal ethics and values as to how you use these tools. When it comes to something like energy usage, for example, local models, open source local models like Llama and Gemma and these other tools, they can run on devices as small as your phone, right? Which means that instead of having a data center that needs a nuclear reactor to power it, the energy usage is distributed, and those smaller models are much more efficient. If you watched Apple's WWDC, they were talking a lot about how running local models on an iPhone, you can do a lot of tasks like summarization and extraction and rewriting just with on-device chips. And so I would say if energy usage is a concern, be actively researching the ways you can use these local models. There's a great open source software package called Olama that runs local models. If your laptop can play Call of Duty, your laptop can run local models and do very, very well and accomplish a lot of these tasks without using bigger services that consume a lot of energy.
Oh, nice, amazing, amazing! How you you brought up such a deep topic with essential topics for those who want to know more about these topics. So you shared so many topics that it's very good. So yeah, we have another question from Coin. You are right about data quality, as it could be quite shaky within companies. Could you use prompting efficiently for cleaning that up?
It depends. It depends on the kind of data that you have and how shaky the quality is. So if you have numeric data, you might not use prompting. You might use classical AI, the older regression and classification AI. There's techniques called imputation, where you use machine learning techniques to basically guess what missing numbers are or identify anomalies, delete them, and then replace them with things that look more sensible. On the numeric side, that's pretty well established. Imputation and inferment using classical machine learning techniques. For text and unstructured data, yes, you can use prompting. You can use tools to clean up unstructured data or structure it. We talked about in the classification section about being able to take text and classify it to say like, okay, this is the sentiment of this is this, or the topic of this is this, and you can do that as well. I would say you can't necessarily do it well just with a tool like ChatGPT. You will have to have some plumbing or some infrastructure around it. So maybe a Python script to grab the data from somewhere and then hand it off to a language model, and then take the results back from the language model and pass it back to whatever system. We do that. I do that all the time. It requires more technical skill than just writing a prompt, but prompting is part of that process.
Very interesting, because you mentioned it in one of your examples that we can insert like a whole book in a prompt. So for you, is it better, a big prompt like with all the rows, the author, and all the way how you share it, or maybe break down in many steps? Do you see any difference between these two way how we interact with?
Yeah, there's a big difference on cost because a big prompt with a million tokens, you're going to pay
Yeah.
per token. So there's that aspect. There's a speed aspect too. If you can use a small model like Llama, the Llama 8 billion parameter model, or Gemma 9 billion parameter, and you're doing one row at a time, it's very fast. It's very atomic, so you can process things, stop a job, resume a job, etc. The big usage is when you use a big model is when you have a big chunk of text that you need to process in some fashion. So I'll give you an example. I was on stage in Australia not too long ago, and the Australian government had released its new federal budget the night before. And this event I was speaking at deals a lot with the government. So on stage I said, okay, let's take the whole federal budget, put it into Gemini, and then ask it questions like, how is this going to impact this industry and these people? And that's an example where you want to treat the corpus as something you want to ask questions of as a whole, as opposed to classifying and processing rows of data. If it's in rows, if it's structured, you want to probably opt for a smaller, more iterative approach.
Oh, nice, amazing, amazing. Well, we have one last question. Is there an AI plugin for Mautic? I'm not sure if we have one. I just searched it right now, and I found one topic in our community, Mautic community, mentioning about one solution called shinpino.com. I'm going to type here in our chat. So I'm not sure if that it's if this solution is updated or not, but it's a good way how to start it. So well, uh,
The Here's something I'll say on this. This is
okay,
interesting. Mautic plugins are basically just scripts, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what they are. They're a bundle of scripts and assets. No different than a WordPress plugin, etc. Mautic has documentation on how you build plugins. If there's a specific thing you want it to do, if you want to talk to ChatGPT's OpenAI API or Gemini's API or whatever, or Olama, give the documentation to a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini and say, help me write a Mautic plugin that will connect to the AI engine of your choice that will do X, Y, and Z functionality. I did this recently with WordPress. There was this thing I wanted to do in my WordPress blog, and like, oh, there's all these plugins in there, like $15 a month. I'm like, it's just a banner. I don't want to spend money. So the tool said, okay, well, let's write a plugin, and it did, and it was not a huge undertaking. So if you want to add
amazing, yeah, great,
if you want to add a button in the Mautic Composer to say, here's connect your with OpenAI's API and process functions, instruct any of the today's models to say, help me write this code, help me
yeah,
build this plugin, and then you've got your plugin. And by the way, if it's really good, then you can put it out to the rest of the world, maybe even sell access to it and stuff. But one of the things people forget is that language models are so good at coding, because unlike spoken language and written human language, coding is unambiguous. There's different ways of solving problems, but there's no free forming the syntax in Python, right? It either
yeah,
runs or it doesn't. And so these tools are incredible coders. So I would sit down and say, how can we write a plugin for Mautic? And this is another example. With Mautic, you may have a plugin that it's no longer maintained and it stops working. Maybe it's not compatible with Mautic 5. Guess what? Download it. Say, here's the requirements from the Mautic website for Mautic 5. Put that into Gemini. Here's the existing code. Update the code to be compliant with Mautic 5. And suddenly that old plugin that you love that doesn't work anymore now works with Mautic 5.
amazing, amazing. Yes, so great because you are bringing one example that we can use LLMs like our 3D printer, like we are printing, instead of physical products, we are printing digital products using ChatGPT. So yeah, it's amazing. So thank you very much. We are running out of time. So thank you for joining our community. So you already shared your contacts. So yeah, uh, I hope we can meet again in one of our next sessions.
Exactly. And everyone, if you don't have a chance, join the Mautic Slack. I mean, the community is great there, and it's a lot of fun.
Bye bye, Christopher.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye. Well, it was a great session. I think now it's time for our next session. We see you in our next room.